So, let's talk about Need for Speed. Now, when I talk about Need for Speed, what I mean is we're going to be looking at Need for Speed 2017, which is confirmed for release this year, pretty much. And also, we're going to be taking a look back at Need for Speed 2015. What was good about it, what was bad about it, and what do we want to see in the next game? Now, personally, I have a huge connection to Need for Speed. Now, when Underground come out, and obviously I was a kid, I personally become a car guy, not from having someone in my family who's into like motorsport or builds their own cars or whatever. I genuinely become a car guy from playing Need for Speed, playing with Hot Wheels and watching Fast and Furious. Now, I'm not ashamed of that. Some of you guys might be like that, some of you guys might be the other version, where you've had family that have got you into it and stuff. But I played Need for Speed and I was amazed. You could take this car, turn it into whatever you want. It was an extension of yourself, and you got to take this creation, drive it around, and you could kick the shit out of some people in campaign. These guys that you pretty much hated because they've got these cool cars and you want to be better than them. That's the essence of Need for Speed for me. Now, there's tons of things I want to talk about, so I'm going to split it up into 5 sections. So I've got graphics and world, cars and customization, gameplay and handling, campaign, and multiplayer. So I'm going to focus on these 5 different sections. Obviously, they'll intertwine in different ways, but I think we need to address what was good about them, what was bad, and what we can take moving forward, and what brand new things can we bring to Need for Speed to make it even better. Because let's be honest, the racing game scene at the minute isn't fantastic. It doesn't have the spirit of what it used to have about 10 years ago, longer than that, all the way back to the Underground days and the Midnight Club days. It just isn't. It just feels like it's lacking something. Now, let's be honest. There was a lot of problems with Need for Speed 2015, but let's give some credit to the developers, Ghost Games, because what they done is they took an idea from that everybody wanted. They took the Underground series, the Underground racing scene, and they pretty much brought it back to life. Now, they worked on a new engine, they've done it in 2 years, and they brought a lot of shit that we wanted. Now, there's a lot of things wrong with it, don't get me wrong, I'm going to talk about those in this video, but they still created it, and they've taken an extra 2 years now to build on what they've created and make it even better. So what I'm expecting for this is good things, but there's still a lot of things that we need that I want to address in this video. So let's get into it. Graphics and world. Now, the first point I want to make in Need for Speed 2015 that annoyed a lot of people is no day and night cycle. This really pissed me off. It pissed off a lot of people as well. It was always dark, a nocturnal world. Yeah, it's cool for the Underground racing scene, but we want daytime. We want to take pictures of our cars in the day. We just want to cruise in the daytime and shit. It just makes it feel a lot better to have a day and night cycle. If you're constantly in night, I don't know, sometimes I would just not go and play the game because of the fact that it's always at night, and I know it's going to be dark and it's just gloomy, and maybe I'm not in the mood for that. I want a bit of variety, which is why I think a lot of us want a day and night cycle. Now, the next one is over-the-top graphics. Now, I think that this was a detriment to the game when it came out. Obviously, it looked amazing, do not get me wrong, but they need to tone it down a bit. There was too much over-the-top graphics. Obviously, with the Frostbite engine, you could make the game look sick, but I believe with this much detail in the game, it takes the guys a lot longer to model stuff, to make things work properly, and obviously, they've got to cut some stuff out of the game to make it actually run smoothly. So, it's just a bit over the top, especially with all the rain. Obviously, they've got to do the reflections of the rain everywhere. Just tone the rain down a bit. We don't need rain all the time. Yeah, it looks good, but we don't want it all the time. If you turn the rain down, you wouldn't have to reflect all this shit from all these different spots on the road and all the little dots on the car, and you could just have tons more stuff in the game. Now, no, I'm not a dev. I've not worked in the industry before, but I just, you know that having this much detail in a game, it just doesn't work properly. Now, I wouldn't say that we want it toned down all the way back to like GTA graphics, because yeah, they're all right for GTA, but for realistic cars and stuff, I think it's not quite there. You want for the tri-counts for the cars and the amount of detail that have to go in them to make them look realistic enough and please the actual manufacturers, you'd have to have a certain amount of detail. Like Forza, for example, they can have tons of cars on screen at once, and it runs quite smoothly. So I think the graphics on Need for Speed are a bit too much. Without rambling on too much about that, that is something that I would like to see toned back. Even though everyone liked it, I personally liked it, I just like to see it toned back a bit. Now, something else that bugs me about the world of Need for Speed is too many boundaries. It just annoys me, I don't know what it is. It just feels like it's a bit claustrophobic. There's too many barriers and walls all over the place, and the roads are a bit, yeah, they're wide and stuff, but you feel like you're always going to hit something. Now, I wouldn't want it open on the scale of Horizon, like driving over fields and stuff like that. I just don't think that's what Need for Speed's about. But But something that I think would make the game interesting, for example, you're doing a toge, you're on some canyon roads, and instead of having a barrier there, it'll just be an open cliff. So if you mess up and you're doing a drift, you'll just fly off the cliff. And you can incorporate this into some stuff, like for example, if you're doing a race with your mates or something, or even if it's just like a single player race, you'll fly off the cliff, your car will roll and stuff. If you remember that scene from Tokyo Drift where it rolls and it goes into slow motion, you see him fly past. Stuff like that. That would make races interesting as well. So you're like driving along, someone will fly off a cliff, it'll go into a cutscene where you see them flying off and stuff. Or there'd just be tons of different things where you could incorporate that to make races on Need for Speed much more interesting. Now I'm thinking, how would that work in multiplayer? Well, maybe it would just pause the race completely, you'd just watch this cutscene of them falling down, and then the race would carry on as normal. That might put people off, or it could be cool. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments section, just a random idea I've come up with. And the next one I want to talk about is sounds. Now, I think the sounds on Need for Speed were great. Although a lot of them felt a bit raspy, there wasn't enough bass to it. I think there could be some improvement there, and a bit more variety as well. Like an Evo, didn't sound like an Evo, it was a bit too raspy. There wasn't enough bass to it. Or like the M4, if you shift gear, if you see one in real life and it shifts gear, absolutely boosting it past you, you just feel like it's dumping a bit of bass just out the arse end of it. Like it'll change and just go. I want to be able to feel that sort of stuff on Need for Speed as well, just feel like more bass from the cars and stuff like that. Although the sound quality was great, more variety, more realism for each car as well. Now, something else about the graphics and world in general is photo mode. They brought this in an update, and I think it was amazing. It worked really well. Now, there were some problems as well with like reflections, where if you were looking at a certain part of the car, like looking down, there was a puddle below, you wanted the reflection, it would cut it off. Because how Need for Speed works is like, where you're not looking, it will despawn the environment. So if you're just looking at the front end of your car, the back end won't actually be spawned in until you look at it. Now, it spawns it in really fast, which isn't a problem. But I think if you're in photo mode, it should use that extra little actual processing so that you can actually see the reflections and stuff. Just a little touch that you guys might have noticed or might not. But something else that I want to see as well, addition to the photo mode, is a video editor. Now, I think it will work well with Need for Speed. Theater mode is a big thing in a lot of games. For example, in GTA 5, I love doing cinematics in that. And even in Forza Horizon, there's a theater mode there, or the drone mode, for example. Drone mode's pretty cool, but I would like to see somewhere where you can record clips and then you can go back and edit it afterwards. Now, obviously, not everyone's a YouTube creator, so Ghost Games might not think that it's entirely necessary. But even still, to see creations, especially from myself and some other YouTube creators, or you guys in general on other social media platforms, just posting videos of your car, doing some cool cinematics and stuff, I think it would make the game a lot more interesting. Maybe even you could have like a play card where you can have your own showcase that people can watch or something like that. I'll go on to play cards in a bit as well. But moving on, I would also like to see some denser traffic. Something that I felt Need for Speed 2015 was lacking was not enough traffic. For example, if you're going on the highway, we could see scenes from the trailer where there was like the crew all just weaving through traffic and stuff. I was hoping we would get that sort of stuff, but there wasn't enough traffic. We couldn't weave through traffic and stuff and do all this mad underground racing stuff in that sense. I feel again that that's down to the world having too much detail and they can't spawn in enough AI. It would just be a bit too laggy. But personally, I would like to see some more traffic so I can do traffic weaving. That was one of my favourite things in the old Need for Speed games. Getting near misses, see how close you could get to the cars, and just do stuff like that. It'd be good for Outlaw as well if there was a challenge where you got to get as many near misses and you've got to like weave past as many cars as possible. So yeah, right, moving on. Talking about denser traffic, I would also like less traffic. For example, in drift events and stuff like that, when there's AI all over the place, I wouldn't like to smash into them and stuff, so maybe for certain events, in drift events and stuff, just get rid of the traffic in that route that you're going. Now, how that would work with Overdrive, obviously you've got other people in your game and stuff. Now, should they have traffic in those locations where you're drifting? I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one, but yeah, more traffic on the highways and stuff, so you can do traffic weaving, but less traffic in everything else, if that makes sense. Now, moving on to part 2. This is going to be a long video. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of stuff to discuss that I haven't discussed before. So, car choice. I think it was good, although we were lacking a lot of things. For example, some of the things that made the old Underground games great was some like courses. You could have a Peugeot 106 or just stupid cars like a Corsa and just trick out and put massive subs and stupid ricey ass body kits on it. It'd be cool to have those options in there just so you could go and do it and just have a laugh, or just you might genuinely like those builds so you can go and do it. Now, obviously, it was some of the most iconic cars in real world car culture, Some of them more relatable than others, some just not relatable at all. But on the general scale of things, they weren't all that relatable. Yeah, in real life, I've got an Evo and I've got an Evo in game, but a lot of people just drive hatchbacks, especially in the UK. A lot of people drive Corsas and Fiestas and stuff like that. We just don't have that in the game. I personally would love to see those in the game. I think a lot of people would actually genuinely love having more relatable cars like that, just normal cars. And generally for every car, for example the Evo, we don't have an Evo 5 or 6, or we don't have an Evo 10. I would love to see those in, and especially if they're just building off what Need for Speed 2015 has, they can put those cars in on top as well. Now obviously it takes a long time to model the cars, but if they model on top of 2015, we'll have an even bigger car list. But then again, we go back to how detailed the world is, how much can the game handle before it gets too much. If you pull in too many files from certain places, it can get a bit over the top, which is why they need to tone the graphics down, give us more cars and more customization. Now, there was other cars as well, like no R33 Skyline, no Dodge Charger, no EP3 Civic and stuff like that. There was no Mitsubishi Eclipse, no 350 or 370Z, which a lot of people were annoyed about. So I'd like to see those cars come into the game, and hatchbacks of course. I'm sure a lot of people want hatchbacks. Let me know in the comment section, what is the car that you want the most from Need for Speed 2015? I'm genuinely interested to see. I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of variation depending on where you are in the world as well, and what's most common in your areas. Now there's also something else that's a problem with racing games at the minute as well, and that's licensing. Now licensing is a big problem. For example, if you take a look at the Ferrari F40 in Need for Speed, you can't change anything on it. You can change the colour and the wrap and stuff, but you can't even change the wheels. You can't change anything on the car. Now that's most likely from Ferrari saying we don't want the car to look any other way, we want it to look this way and no other way, which is pretty stupid, but that's just the way I think manufacturers are going. They want their cars to look a certain way, so if someone posts a picture of their car online, like a Ferrari F40 that's riced out with a massive wing and some stupid body kit and some scatty chrome spinners or something, Ferrari just don't want it. They won't let the devs put it in the game. I think that's the way it's pretty much going with racing games at the minute. But a lot of manufacturers are quite lenient. For example, Nissan, I think they're quite lenient with what you can put on your cars and stuff like that. And Honda and stuff. Some other manufacturers. But it's a bit annoying. So I think the licensing team maybe just hire another 100 people so that they can try and encourage more manufacturers to let us do stuff to the cars, which I think is something that's a big problem. So I can understand if there isn't a lot of customization for some cars. But if it's down to actual development time, again, pull back on the graphics and give us more customization, because I feel like Need for Speed 2015 sold itself with tons of customization and we just didn't get as much as we expected. Don't get me wrong, there was quite a lot for some of the cars, but some of them just had absolutely nothing, which was a big letdown. Now something else in customization that I would like to see is a just wheel offset, rather than having separate wheels with different like the same wheels with different offset, like saying, oh, I got Workmeister S1s and Workmeister F1 Deep Dish. I'd like to see some sort of, not like an auto sculpt thing from Pro Street, where you can adjust the offset, where you can maybe have 3-piece, so it'll just put the studs around it and stuff like that, and then just different options that would make the wheel choice a bit more interesting and a step up from what Need for Speed 2015 was. Now, I think excessive camber should be an option. Now, hear me out. A lot of you guys might be like, whoa, we don't want stupid stance in Need for Speed 2015. Well, at least give it an option. You don't have to do it, but maybe with excessive stance as well, if you make the car stupidly low or the wheels like tucked in loads, it would just make it basically undrivable. So say like it might warn you at a point saying like if you go past this point in stance, like it's going to be undrivable, it's going to be hard to drive, which would be cool. It'd be realistic to just drive a car around scraping everywhere, getting stuck on little humps. I think a lot of people like that. Personally, I don't think I would do it that much, but I think a lot of you guys that are into stance might just like to see what that's like and just give it a go. So I think that would be a cool addition to the game as well. Now something else that I'd like to see as well is bags. Of course we can just lower it normally, but maybe we can have a button, so if we press this button on a controller or whatever, it will just start, you'll hear the hiss like from the compressor, just tss, and then it will just slowly go down. I'm sure a lot of people love that. It's a big thing in real world car culture now as well, so I think it'd be a cool feature. Even though gameplay wise it might not have a massive impact, it would still be cool. Now something else that I feel was a boss addition to Need for Speed 2015 was a wrap editor. Now obviously making our own wraps for cars, putting shit on the windows, decals, or even going like making some mad shit all over the car, like some crazy like racing livery or something. That was awesome. Now the one problem I had was there wasn't enough space to make a good wrap. So you might do one side of the car and you can't copy it to the other side because there isn't enough space. Now that's something, again, could be down to graphics or whatever, but it needs to tone down a bit so that we can make even better wraps. Then they come up with an update where we could apply it to the other side and stuff. So the wrap editor is pretty good as it is, and I would like to see it return in the same way in Need for Speed 2017. Now, engine bay customization. This is something that we don't have yet, and again could add some extra customization, like detail to cars that we don't really need in a way. But maybe it doesn't really spawn it in when we're driving about. We don't need it when we're driving about. But there's some like details on the cars as well. For example, the interior. Now the detail on the interiors is stupidly detailed. For example, on GTA, that's a first-person game. The interior on those is even less detailed than the interiors on Need for Speed 2015. And we can't even go in first person on Need for Speed 2015. So it's pretty stupid. I think they need to tone down on that a bit and apply detail into more important areas so that the game will run a bit more smoothly. But going back to engine bay customization, this could be something, for example, car meets, which I'll go into in a little bit later on. But for car meets and stuff, we wanted to go and pop the hood and have this cool engine bay with different mods and stuff. But engine bay customization, we could like have our own, choose what hard piping we have on the car, choose a cool exhaust manifold. Do we want like a normal manifold, or do we want a tubular one? Or can we see a massive turbo somewhere? And we could just unlock different parts for engine bay customization. But again, for every single car, that's going to take a long time. Could even do engine swaps. But again, wishful thinking, probably never going to happen. But it would still be one of the coolest additions to a racing game that I've ever seen. Maybe in the future. Probably not going to be for Need for Speed 2017, but would still be cool. Now, another thing is custom garages. And the ability to walk about in your garage and just maybe even drive your car a little bit, move it around, and choose where you park your cars. That'd be cool. So obviously having some custom garages, having your mates walk in and stuff, and having a custom character, which I'll go on to a little bit later on as well in the next section. But that'd be pretty cool to have your own custom garage and put your own decals and stuff around and just choose where you put your cars. Now going back onto car customization, one thing that I feel like a lot of the cars need is the ability to debadge them. A lot of people do this in real life, so when the devs actually model it, they should have this variable item that can say, well, these items will be like either they're there or they're not. So we can just remove any sort of badges that we want and just debadge the whole car. I think it would be personally a good touch. Some cars it might be difficult, for example like a Renault where there's just an indent. If you take it away, there's going to be nothing there. But then again, you could use a wrap and do something creative with it. So I think the ability to debadge any car is something that I would like to see in the next game. Now another thing that I'd like to see is the ability to choose your blow-off valve. Now I think this would be pretty cool. So maybe you put a turbo on, you want to choose what blow-off valve you've got to make different noises. If you can either go do or tss. So yeah, I think it'd be a pretty cool thing. It could make the sound a lot more interesting as well. Now you could have the same car, you could both have Evos and you both got different blow-off valves and maybe different exhaust sounds as well, which is another point that I want to move on to. So when you choose your actual exhaust, maybe you'll be able to preview the sound so that you can have some different types. And when you go into performance and you do decat and you do deresonated and like all this sort of stuff, it will make it enhance that sound depending on what you've chosen at the back of the car, like when you're changing the exhaust tip. Again, wishful thinking, it could be a bit too much, but in addition to what I've already got from Need for Speed 2015, and something in general as well, is just more customization. We need more parts. More parts for every car is something that we need, so hopefully we'll get that. Now, one last thing for customization is neons. Now, this could be a writer thing to a lot of you, but at least give us the option. It was on Morohashi-san's Diablo. We saw it for the first time. It was pretty cool, and I'd like to see that come back. So maybe we can just put a tube under each car, and it would just be like the way GTA does it is you will have these nodes that would say, right, the light has to come from here underneath the car, and we don't really see the underneath of the car, so we don't need LEDs underneath them. So I think it would be a pretty easy addition for the devs to do. So I think I would like to see that come back, even if we don't get the neons along the car or the different LEDs everywhere. At least neons under the car, I think it would be fairly easy for the devs to do. But then again, I've not worked in the industry, I don't know. So moving on to gameplay and handling. Now, one thing that I think was a problem with the game was it wasn't challenging enough. The races were a bit too easy. I think it was 2 Amy missions that were really difficult. I would like to see that level of difficulty. Obviously, progressing up to the top, they would get that hard. Because I felt it was too easy to just storm through the campaign, except for those 2 missions, which I found quite fun and challenging to do. So I think having more challenging races would make the game a lot better to play. For example, on Need for Speed Pro Street, there was these speed challenges, and I would get so triggered, but it was a good trigger because it was that hard. I ended up throwing my controller at the TV, so maybe not that good. But those sort of challenges were like, even on the speed challenge where you've got to just max out your car completely and you can't hit anything, you're on like this really short time limit. It would make me triggered, but it was fun. It was challenging fun. We need that level of difficulty back in Need for Speed in some way. Now, they did do that a bit with the Prestige range, which was good, but I think straight from the get-go, we need that sort of difficulty building up to that level. Now, let's talk about handling, a very sketchy topic. Some people loved it. Most people, though, hated it. Now, if you're coming from Forza and you're expecting like a simulator style or a Assetto Corsa or a Drive Club or anything like that, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get that simulation style. It's an arcade racing game. So, I'm not trying to trigger people by saying that. You're just not going to get a simulation type of game. That's not what Need for Speed is. Now, don't get me wrong. The handling was a bit fucked, basically. It was fucked. There were some parts to it that were really good. For example, the drifting with all-wheel drive cars and the Huracan. You had to learn how to use it, but once you learned how to use it properly, you could like utilize it properly and get some good drifts out of it, and it was really fun. But for the majority of cars, a lot of rear-wheel drive cars, for example, when you're drifting, so sometimes when you're trying to get into a drift, it would just get really snappy and weird. You don't know how to control it. You're flicking the left stick, left and right. Sometimes you go off and you get some nice counter steer and keep it drifting. But the majority of the time for a lot of rear-wheel drive cars, it would just grip and you just smash into shit, and the revs are bogged down and you just won't be able to do anything properly. Something as well that come in was manual. I feel that manual helped out a lot of the drifting and stuff. Obviously, it needs to be improved for the automatic versions of the cars when they're actually drifting and stuff. So generally, the handling has to be improved in general. It just basically needs to be a bit more smooth. It can't be too snappy. It can't be. It feels like you're constantly fighting the game. It feels like there's scripted controls in a way, and you just can't figure them out. You've got to figure out how to make the game play for you rather than you actually playing the game. It's a bit of a weird one, but another good example of this is low speed drifting. For example, if you want to do some gymkhana and drift around cones and stuff, you just can't do that on Need for Speed 2015. For example, if I want to drift around a car, it won't work. It will just go into an automatic donut where you press right trigger and left on the thumbstick, and it just does this same thing for every single car where it just does this donut around a single spot. You don't have control over it. It's the game basically doing it for you with these basic inputs that you tell it to do. Now, for Gymkhana, I want to be able to completely control my car, like do a reverse entry if I want to with an all-wheel drive car, or just drift around the car nice and smoothly like you can in GTA or Forza Horizon. You just can't do that in Need for Speed 2015. Now, yes, it's an arcade game and it's supposed to have this unique driving style, but at least give us more control. We need more control of the arcade style. If we have what we do in Need for Speed 2015, but we can control it properly, we decide how we properly move rather than doing stuff for us and bogging us down and all this shit, I think it will be a great game and a lot more fun to play. Now, moving up to the grip side, this was a bit weird as well. You get tons of wheel spin in it, even though it was really grippy. Now, it was sort of intended to be a drag sort of build, I believe, although it wasn't advertised as that. People would throw it all the way to the grip, expecting it to be like a track car, whereas a good track car would be somewhere in the middle and you'd mess with the tuning a bit. So that was a bit of a sketchy one. I believe the grip was good for drag racing, but it just wasn't for actual normal driving. And even still, when you're in the middle of the actual tuning section, it's not a nice balance. It either understeers too much or you induce oversteer and you just grip at the wrong time, and again you go into a wall. It's just not great. So a big improvement needs to happen there for Need for Speed 2015, especially for a lot of people to be happy about it. But yeah, let's move on. Now, something else that is a big problem since Need for Speed has moved on to Frostbite, it was even a bit of a problem in Rivals and stuff like that, but it's heavy collisions. Now, sometimes the car feels light, sometimes it feels super heavy. For example, when you go over a hump and you drop down, the camera just bogs down with the car and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. It makes the car feel heavy and stuff. And actually, the sounds actually enhance it as well, which is good. But one problem is collisions with Frostbite. You'll probably notice this if you've played Battlefield as well. If you smash into a wall, the engine just doesn't know what to do. It starts freaking out, glitching. A lot of the time, sometimes you'll be scraping past a barrier, you'll tap it a little bit, and then your car will just fuck off onto the other side of the road and start rolling and doing about a million rolls. It's just stupid, it's weird. And when you're hitting into other cars, it'll just get really glitchy and your cars will start waving about and your camera will be all over the place. So I think that could be down to Frostbite itself, which is why the collisions are a bit weird in Need for Speed 2015. I don't know how they're going to improve it for 2017, but collisions do need improving. There is a big problem there. And moving on from the collisions as well is drifting collisions. For example, when you're doing drifting and stuff and you tap a wall, something that really triggered me is losing all my points. Now, some of you guys might say, oh, if you tap a wall, you shouldn't get points. You don't get that in real world drifting and stuff. You lose points for clipping things. but it's an arcade game. We want to keep the points going. We want it to be a bit more lenient. If you're on Forza Horizon, then maybe that's okay. But for example, if you tap a wall, you should be able to carry on going and just keep your points, for example. It happened so many times to me in Maximum Attack, and it used to trigger me so much. And this isn't the good trigger. It would just annoy me. I get this massive combo, maybe like 500,000 points. Then I tap this wall ever so slightly. I keep it going nice and skillfully, and then I just lose my points. So I think if you do it nice and skillfully, you should keep your points. But for example, if you smash into a wall and you just lose control, then fine, take my points away. I don't care. So I think that's something that needs to be improved for 2017 as well. Now, earning rep as well was something that I quite enjoyed. I love seeing it come up on screen with my multiplayer and stuff, and then like getting near misses and just general building up rep in the perfect moment. Getting it in the 5 ways to play, I absolutely love that. I want that to come back. I can't think of any way to change it properly to make it better. I think it was pretty good as it is. Now, you guys might disagree with me, and let me know why down in the comments. But moving on, we've also got a car meet section. So car meets is a big thing in urban car culture. So yeah, car meets and shows are a big thing in urban car culture. Now, this wasn't something that was in Need for Speed 2015. Yeah, you could go with your mates and just park up and do stuff. Maybe you could go into photo mode and look at the cars. But I think like a dedicated car meet area would be awesome for 2017. So obviously to have tons of cars in one place, it would be hard on the engine. But I think what it should do is, for example, you can go into an underground car park. And when you're in this underground car park, it will despawn the rest of the world. It will just be this nice little area that doesn't have tons of detail, so that we can get more cars in the same place. And it wouldn't be as harsh on the engine. Maybe you can have some AI cars to fill up the space as well, rather than players. For example, on GTA, when you go into interior, it makes the rest of the world low res. So the interior is actually a bit more fleshed out. It's a lot more detail. So the same thing for car meets in Need for Speed 2017. I would love to see that. But also as well is something that I requested to the devs last time was a drone mode. Now that coming Forza Horizon 3, but I think that to push it even further, to make racing games like make Need for Speed jump out from the rest, is like a customizable character. Now hear me out. It's not Need for Speed, it's not been done before, but I think it would push it even further to have this own custom character that you can relate to your car. Because we do say in the real world that our cars are an extension of our personality, and our cars are an extension of ourselves, and they're representative of our personality, basically a showcase of who we are. So I think to take that idea, have your own customizable character that is associated with your car. For example, you could have it on a player card, like on Halo, you have a guy with a stance that have a fold in his arms, got a gun over his shoulder. We would just have our car, either we're working on the engine bay or something, we could just be sitting on the car, we could fold our arms or anything like that. I think it'd be a cool addition. Now I'll expand that point a bit with campaign and multiplayer as well. But for example, Speedless, a great addition to multiplayer. I'll talk about that in a bit. But for example, at the end of the Speedless, when it shows you who's won, you'll actually have your guy standing on the car. Maybe he's either folding his arms and he spits on the floor to say like, fuck you, I've just beat you. Or you can just be nice and humble. You can just be sitting on your bonnet and you'll nod at the camera or something. So you could just extend how you want to portray yourself in the game even further. And again, Need for Speed 2015 tried to play on this idea of becoming an icon. I think that would extend that point even further, make it a lot more relatable and sort of human in a way for us to experience the game and make the game pretty much come to life in a way. Now, it could never happen. Wishful thinking again, but I think it would be a great addition to Need for Speed 2017. One of my highest up there, probably below handling and leaderboards, which I'll go on to in a minute. So, moving on to our fourth topic, campaign. Now, expanding my point about a customizable character, if we remember the cutscenes in Need for Speed 2015, they were very cheesy. The live action cutscenes, yeah, they were cool and innovative, especially having our car in the cutscenes. I just don't think there was enough there to make the story cool enough. Just the constant fist bumps and all this shit, just didn't enjoy it. We need to have antagonists. We need to have antagonists that we can fight. For example, from Need for Speed Underground or Need for Speed Most Wanted, we had the Blacklist as well. We would have someone that would rustle us up, make us a bit pissed off and be like, right, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to take your car and ruin your fucking day. So I think that is something that we need back in Need for Speed 2017. Not people coming around giving you fist bumps saying, yeah, good job, dude. That's a good race. You can have my car if you want. No, it's annoying. Especially the icons as well. They were just not cool. It was cool to see them in the game, don't get me wrong, but they're not good actors, and I don't think it enhanced the story in any way. Something that I would like to see is battling people in the 5 ways to play. Now, I take this sort of from Pro Street. So like on Pro Street, you had the 5 kings, you had the Grip King, the Drag King, the Drift King, the Speed King, and the Showdown King. I thought this was one of the coolest things. I loved battling for all these 5 ways to play. Although I didn't actually enjoy the game that much, because obviously it was on the track and stuff, I didn't enjoy it for that at all. But I loved the idea of the 5 kings and climbing the ladder in each way to play to defeat them. And ultimately become the best of the best. Now, again, they tried to do this in Need for Speed 2015, but the way it was just being spoon-fed to you, didn't like it, don't want to see that back. Now, onto the customizable character bit. We could have our customizable character in these cutscenes. If we have like CGI cutscenes or whatever, we can have our character with our car. We can have some cool cutscenes where we roll up and we have our guy who just like in Fast and Furious, where he's like just chilling and he's looking at the guy, and then we've got an antagonist who's like, I'm going to fuck you up, and you're like, nah. And then you just fuck them up. We get some cool cutscenes where they start a race. There could be loads of people around, starts a race, and then you actually start the race where you're rolling. So we could have cool cutscenes like that. And also we could have maybe even co-op. We could have our mates who have their own customizable characters coming in and doing crew like missions with us and stuff. I think that would be cool. So we could have the 5 ways to play again. Maybe we can have a solo campaign in the 4 ways to play. When we get to crew, we need to either search for a game to match the people to do the missions with, or you can actually have your own dedicated standalone crew and you can all do like all the missions together. I think that would be a pretty cool addition to Need for Speed 2017. Whether we'll get it, I don't know. So again, back onto the idea of becoming an icon. Each antagonist you remember from the old games like Razor or Eddie or Melissa, you remember their car, but you also remember how they look and how they acted. So I think having your own character who can do their own stances in certain situations, either at car meets, at the end of speed lists, or as a player card, for example, like they do on Halo, like I mentioned before, that'd be something that would completely top this game off. Something that I want to see a lot, that would enhance that idea of being an icon. Now, moving on to our final point of multiplayer. This is something I'm quite passionate about. I'm very much a social gamer. I love playing with my mates and stuff like that, and playing with my crew. I'm not much of an achievement hunter. Yes, I am competitive and stuff, but I think at heart I like to be sort of a social gamer. But again, Need for Speed has to cater for all these type of players. So, I've got an idea for an end game, which I'll go on a little bit later, but let's get on to what was good about Need for Speed 2015. Now at the start, obviously it wasn't great. But then they brought in Speedlist. Speedlist was really awesome. You can search for certain races, and then you go into these, like, you get into these mini playlists that you get to compete in, whereas when the game come out, you would just, like, you'd have to go to a race and then invite certain people in. And generally, most of the time, not a lot of people would come in. So Speedlist was a great addition. Like to see it back in Need for Speed 2017, but enhanced a bit with leaderboards, which I'll get onto in a second. Player count needs to be increased as well. Again, if they need to bring down the graphics a bit, please do that, because I think for a racing game as well, and having car meets with the big focus on urban world car culture, we need car meets. We need to have a bunch of people in a game at once so we can share the experience with more people. I think it will be a lot better. So maybe we can have a player count of 12. I'd be quite happy with that. I prefer 16, but maybe in car meets we can even have more people in at the same spot. And something else as well is a dedicated crew system. I mentioned this a little earlier, but something that's standalone. Now, one of the 5 ways to play was crew. Now, to enhance that even further, I was quite surprised in Need for Speed 2015 that this wasn't a feature, to have your own crew, like your own club in Forza Horizon, or your own crew like you have on Social Club on GTA 5. I think you should be able to set one up. You'd be able to set a logo. You'd maybe like even have your own leaderboards in this crew, or maybe have like a crew card that shows like all your top players in the crew, or who the leaders are. You get to choose whose cars and whose people appear at this in this crew lobby thing, and you can maybe all talk in this place. You can send out notifications to people to say when meets or certain events are. Something I think that would enhance the game a lot for a lot of people is if you want to play with your mates and stuff, or you've got like a big established crew like we do, which is 6-star. I didn't really go along with 6-star in Need for Speed because there wasn't really a good end game or anything that would support our crew properly on that game. For example, we couldn't do meets properly. We'd have to sit there in our car and drive around, which is why I want customizable characters to walk about. But anyway, I'm rambling a bit and going off on a tangent. Let's get on to the big point which I want to make for multiplayer, which is leaderboards. Now, obviously, there wasn't a massive endgame for Need for Speed. Speedlist was pretty good. but it didn't keep me for too long. And a lot of people stopped playing, and it's pretty hard to find a game on Need for Speed 2015 now with speed lists. So something that I want to see is real standout leaderboards. Now I'm not talking about GTA where you're at the end of the game, you press a button and you see the best times and stuff, but leaderboards that glorify the best players in the game. Now this could be a bit sketchy for like legal reasons and stuff, but I think it would be pretty good to glorify these players. For example, esports isn't big in racing games, let's be honest. As much as I would love it to be, it just isn't. I don't think there's enough people for the market to be sort of worthwhile in a way, but something that Need for Speed could do to enhance this sort of idea that there's esports and really competitive players and standout players and stuff is leaderboards. Now what I mean by this is glorifying these players. Now for example, on any big first person shooter like Halo or COD or CSGO, we have these big esports players that we all know. For example, like FaZe Clan or Optic or any of these big Halo groups or anything like that. A lot of us, or a lot of you guys that play first person shooters, might follow these people and you might look up to them and stuff. So we need something like that for Need for Speed. Now I'm not talking about YouTubers, as good as that is for me, if you guys look up to me and stuff, or like Black Panther or something like that. Yeah, YouTubers are great, but we want to see the real competitive players, the people who are actually genuinely the best at the game. So I've just noticed that it has gone dark, and I've had to close my blinds and put my studio lights on, so this video is clearly very long already. But this is something I'm passionate about. This is the good bit, so hopefully you guys have stayed this long. But another point that I want to make as well is obviously me and Straight Up Hippo, another YouTuber, we were at a point where we do these battles on Maximum Attack. It was really competitive. We were constantly showing each other our times on Twitter, say, oh, I've beat you now, I've done this. And we were essentially like trying to see who's the best racer in a way. So to have these leaderboards in place that would say who is actually genuinely the best at the game and all this, and who's climbing the ladder, that would be pretty cool. So let me explain how it would work. Now we don't want these leaderboards to be in the corner like of the pause menu or the main menu or something just out of the way. This would be like an interactive thing that would be quite prominent on the game. Now in this you would have these 5 ways to play, and in these 5 ways to play, now, for example, you might be able to see the top player of Drifting, or the top player in Outlaw, or the top crew in the crew section. So although I'm not a games designer, I've not worked in the industry, I'm quite passionate about this, so I've come up with an idea for how these battle ranks would work. So for example, let's go with Drifting, starting from the top. If you're battle rank 50, you're essentially top ranked in the world. If you're battle rank 49, you're in the bracket 2 to 5. If you're battle rank 48, you're battle rank 6 to 20. You're actually ranked 6 to 20, if you get me. And then it will keep going until you're down to battle rank 1, which everyone would be in by default. And this would be like, I don't know, depending on whatever the brackets reach, it might be like 100,000 every rank 100,000 onwards. And then you'd climb the ladder. So how would you climb this ladder? Now, I think the way you would actually climb it is you would basically go and search for a game, but you would search for a challenge in, say, like Drifting. So the way speed lists work, you'd search and you get into a speed list and you do that. Basically be a best of 3 challenge. Now, instead of just everyone trying to challenge the people at the top, it just wouldn't work that way. You'd always decline like people that are trying to challenge you from below. So rather than requesting a challenge, you would actually go and get matched up. Now it'd be randomly. So instead of, say for example, you're battle rank 24, you want to get to battle rank 25, obviously you're going to have to challenge a person above. But you might also be defending against a person below. So if you search for a challenge, it'll randomly put you against someone in the rank above or the rank below. So you might be defending your place. If you lose to this person who's in a rank below, you'll then swap places. He'll take your rank and you'll take his. Or for example, if you defeat someone who's in the rank above, you'll take his and you'll go up. Now obviously someone might just get right to the top and never search for a game. So obviously there'd have to be some way to stop people from doing that. For example, if you don't play for so many days, you'll automatically go down a rank and you just keep going down until you start playing and getting your place back. So you'd have to keep playing to earn that place. For example, if you're top in the world on Drifting, you're going to have to keep that topped up and keep your top position. But how would it work? How would you actually battle these people, and what challenges would you do to actually climb the ladder? So for example, in Drifting, you might do a 1v1 drift contest, a toge, or a gymkhana battle. Or if you're doing speed, you might do a circuit race, a sprint race, or a time attack. Or if it's outlaw, you might be like who can get the highest damage to state in the shortest amount of time, or who can get the most near misses on a traffic weaving thing, or who can evade the police the quickest. If you might start with like a high heat level and then you've got to escape, and so on. And then build is a weird one. It's like, well, do I have to do a build? And it has to look the best or something. But one thing that inspired me for this is Straight Up Hippo. He's another YouTuber, and he has this series called Undefeated. And what he does is, in this Undefeated series, is he takes a car and he tunes it in a certain way, and he can't change the car for that speed list that he goes into. And he does like so many speed lists in that same car. And obviously he perfects his tune as he goes. So I think someone who's good in build would actually be able to tune their car in a certain amount of time with a certain amount of budget. So you go into this challenge, you'd have a budget, you'd have a time limit, you've got to build a car in this time, and it might be either for drifting, for grip, or it could be a variety, so you've got to do a nice balance build. So I think that'd be what would make the best build players out there. So that'd be a pretty interesting one. And the next one that I want to talk about is crew. So having your own established crew appear on the leaderboards all together. So it's not just one person, you don't climb it individually, you climb it with your crew. So if two crews battle each other, you might have to do a drift train, and obviously the one who's got, like, the crew who's staying together the most, getting the nicest tandems and who work together the best, they'll obviously win in a drift trial. Or it could be something else, you might have to do a sprint race and you need to get all your team across the line first, or you need to get the best positions in that race, and so on. So that was a very specific thing, talking about the battle ranks and how they might work. If Ghost Games were to put this into a Need for Speed in the future, it could be completely different. It might never happen, it might just not work. There could be legal implications or licensing or whatever. But yeah, something I'm quite passionate about, something I'd love to see come to Need for Speed that would be the perfect end game in my opinion. So yeah, it was very specific. This video has been very long. If you had stayed to the end, thank you very much. Now, something that I think a lot of racing game developers are straying away from at the minute is trying to do something different. Now, I'd take it like Ghost Games, they did do something different. They went back to the underground style, they brought it back, they've done it really well. They did get a lot of criticism for it, but hopefully the next game is going to be even better, and I'm sure it will. I'm very passionate about Need for Speed. I never covered Forza Horizon 3 on my channel because it just felt like a reskin of Forza Horizon 2. I've not really got into it, so Need for Speed is a big passion for me. Although I haven't played it in 9 months, I just don't think it was a good end game. And I don't think I could keep the actual content original. So I am majorly looking forward to Need for Speed 2017. Definitely going to be covering it as much as I can on this channel. I am super hyped. I hope you guys are hyped as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this long-winded discussion video. If it wasn't entertaining, I'm sorry, but if it was nice and informative, well, that's a good thing. I can't wait for this next game. I hope you guys can't either. It will be shipping in 2017. There's been a lot of rumours about it coming out in 2018, but that was to do with the finance year and all that bollocks. But yeah. Anyway guys, that's pretty much all for this video. If you are new, do not forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this discussion video, please do leave a like. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.